Hello, everybody. I'm Gerri Willis. Tonight's the night. Just hours from now, all eyes will be on Mitt Romney as he takes the stage at the Republican National Convention in Tampa, Florida. For more on what we can expect, I'm joined by Michael Goodwin, a columnist for the New York Post, and Ford O'Connell, former campaign advisor for John McCain. Welcome to you both. Great to have you guys here. All right, so Ford, let's start with you. What does Mitt Romney need to do? There are going to be some 40 million viewers watching. The stakes are very, very high.
This is the most important night of Mitt Romney's political career. He's not really talking to the Republican base. He's talking to independents and Reagan Democrats. And his job is to really tell them who he is, what he's about, and what he's going to do to get America back on the right track. He has to make them comfortable with him. And if he can do that, he's going to get a good convention bump, coming out of this convention.
Michael, what do you say? What should his focus be? Should he be attacking Obama, describing who he is? Where does he go?
Well, look, Gerri, I think he's got two main objectives that he has to achieve. The first is to really look presidential and sound presidential. I mean, this is something of a litmus test for everybody on their coronation night. The people watching on television especially have to sit there and imagine him in the Oval Office. And as part of that, though, it's not about necessarily are they comfortable with him just in the Oval Office. Are they comfortable that he is going to help them? So really, in the end, it's not about whether they like Mitt Romney, but it's whether they trust him, whether they believe he will help them. This is about the voters. It's not about Mitt Romney.
I want to bring in Pat Caddell, Democratic pollster, who's joining us now. Pat, give us your sense of what Mitt Romney needs to do tonight.
Well, I think the first most important thing he needs to do is to connect with the audience and to be something which he has not been. To be accessible, not remote, and to show something other than that he is like a wooden Indian here, to have some empathy for people. That's number one. Number two, he needs to be able to relate his experiences to helping people, which he has not been able to do. And the third thing he needs to do, and I consider this above all, he needs to connect to big issues. He needs to make this not up there, vote for me because I'm not Obama, but this is how we can move the country to a pro-growth policy. I have a vision, I have a plan, and we have a way to do it. I think they have set the stage for it. He needs to do that and to incorporate with that the crisis. He needs urgency, that the country's in trouble. We're running out of time.
Wow.
We must act.
Pat,
and that's what he needs to do.
It's a long list, and it's frankly a high hurdle.
It's a big task.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
a big task.
And
Gerri, if I could.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that Pat used the word that I think in many ways has been missing from this convention so far, and it's growth. We have not heard a lot of talk about growth. We've heard a fair amount of talk about austerity and reform and fixing and even saving Medicare, but none of this is going to happen unless the country grows, and I think that's something that Mitt Romney, frankly, is
Ford,
quite
do you agree with
good
that?
at.
Has there been no discussion of economic growth and its importance?
There has not been a discussion. It is extremely important, but I do think that really the number one task for Mitt Romney is really to make voters comfortable with him and trust him on how he really analyzes problems and addresses issues.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about last night and recap Paul Ryan's speech, which went over very well. Pat, I'm wondering if Ryan's speech was so good that it'll overshadow anything Mitt Romney does.
Well, I think, I'm starting to give Romney credit. He doesn't seem to be afraid of having stars around him. I thought Christie's performance was unbelievably good, despite what the political people in Washington think. It really reached people. And I thought that Ryan last night was devastatingly good and was able to make himself, I think, to make him demonic now is very hard. He sets a high bar. But together what they did speak to, both Christie and Ryan, was laying out the argument that this is not a Republican Party that is your father's. This is not the party of no. That this is a party oriented to the future. If they succeeded in that and Romney picks it up, that's a plus because it's a Republican brand that has been hurting Romney from the spring on.
Speaking of the party of the future, I want you to hear this statement from Ryan last night about college grads and the economy.
College graduates should not have to live out their 20s in their childhood bedrooms, staring up at fading Obama posters and wondering when they can move out and get going with life. Everyone who feels stuck in the Obama economy is right to focus on the here and now. And I hope you understand this too. If you're feeling left out or passed by, you have not failed. Your leaders have failed you.
Ford, you listen to that, pretty compelling. I think it really struck a note with a lot of people. Can the GOP, can they appeal to younger people?
They can, but they really have to show a willingness to take on the tough problems, to take on the issues like entitlements and education, and not just gloss over, with rosy language, those old faded posters of lost hope and no real change. They have to really own up to what they're going to do and say, this is how we're going to do it.
Michael, you remember that George W. Bush talked about a big tent Republican Party. Last night, Condi Rice was eloquent and describing her view of what America should be. How did you react to her speech?
I thought it was terrific. I thought it was, in many ways, the most complicated speech that we've heard because she dealt both with foreign policy and domestic issues. And I thought she handled them both beautifully. When I read the speech before she gave it, I thought, wow, this is a lot to chew on here. But she delivered it, I thought, just brilliantly, and the crowd loved her. Gerri, you can't have a great speech without a great crowd. And the crowd loved Condi last night.
The specter of Ronald Reagan is everywhere at this convention. People mention Ronald Reagan all the time. He seems to be almost a ghost over people's shoulder. I want you to hear some sound from Ronald Reagan from 1980.
Can anyone look at the record of this administration and say, well done? Can anyone compare the state of our economy when the Carter administration took office with where we are today and say, keep up the good work? Can anyone look at our reduced standing in the world today and say, let's have 4 more years of this?
Pat, can we have that kind of appeal tonight?
Well, I think that, yes, you could, and you'll have some of that, but that's not Romney's task. The public already knows how they feel about Romney. You mentioned something about Condi Rice
Obama,
last night.
Right? We already know how he feels about Obama.
I'm sorry, you got it. But Condi Rice's point about, for instance, about education is a civil rights issue, but you shouldn't be restricted to the zip code you were born should determine your future. That's where they've got to go to answers. They've got the answers on Obama. Obama's negatives are really high on the economy. I don't think that's the problem. Because one thing, Reagan was a known entity when he ran. He was an established figure. Romney, there's still a lot murky with Romney. That's why I make the case he does. There's plenty of time for the negativity.
Well,
Pat, let me hop in there because, Pat, I agree with you. What Romney really needs to do is talk about the future. And one thing that Condi did last night, she talked about as a civil right. What she should have talked about was education as national security going forward. It's the going forward in the future that Mitt Romney really needs to talk about.
All right.
And if he can do that, the voters will trust him.
All right, guys, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your help tonight. Good. Really appreciate it. It's going to be fascinating. Can't wait to watch.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gerri.